Okay, so this is a slightly different type of question, histogram, but also reasonably common, and that is when you don't work out this scale at all. You can avoid it because they've given you a key. Sometimes you have to create your own key, and sometimes you get given one. Here they've given us one, and they've said that these 25 squares, okay, equals 20 trees. And so what I did is 20 shared between the 25, which gave me that each little square was 0.8 of a tree. They gave me that I had to work out an estimate for the interval between 4.5 and 10, and so this 5 would be halfway between 4 and 6, and halfway between 4 and 5 is this line here, which cuts this column of 8 little squares directly in half. So I've got 8 halves of those little squares, so that gave me 4, and then there's 3 rows of 8, which is 24. So I've got 28 little squares here, 170 small squares there. So altogether I calculated that I had 198 small squares. And so I did 198 small squares with a key of 0.8 for each little square, gave me 158.4 trees. And 158.4 trees, if I'm doing an estimate, it makes sense just to round it down to 158 trees. Now in the second section, they want me to draw in 75 trees onto the graph, okay? And I've got a region here going from 10 to 13. Well, 10 to 13 puts the 13 here. And if you count along the bottom, it means you're only going to get 7, you've got 7.5, okay, in this width here. So if I zoom in a bit, along the bottom, there's only 7.5 squares, and I need to work out what this height is. To do that, I said to myself, well, how many little squares do you need to represent 75 trees? So how many squares do you need to represent 75 trees? And so I'm going to do 75 divided by 0.8, and that gave me 93.75 small squares required to represent 75 trees. You can check that by doing 93.75 times 0.8, and it does give you 75. Well, now I know that I need in here 93.75 little squares. I did 93.75 divided by 7.5 and found out that this height is going to have to be 12.5. You can check that by doing 12.5 times 7.5 and ensuring that you get the 93.75. Okay, so I've just gone up 12.5 squares and drawn in the rectangle like that.